Hey everybody, it's Kat B here. Lovely to see you today. Welcome back to the Inspired Connections podcast show. I've got the lovely Ernie Jackson with me today, and I'm really excited to hear his story because I don't actually know it. I know many people that know Ernie and say how incredible he is, but I've never actually met him before. This is my first time. I actually invited him on the podcast because I frequent a cafe every week in my local village here in London. We always call them villages, but obviously they're just parts of central London. But we have a habit here in the UK to call those little areas that we love villages. And I call it my little village. And so I sat in the cafe and I sit in the same place every week. And this time somebody had written the word Ernie in bold writing on the wood. And I was like, And the same day somebody mentioned there was an Ernie on the board, a former board member of Help Your Parents Heal. And I was like, aha, this must be him. Unfortunately for me, Ireland was able to connect us. So it's lovely to see you, Ernie. Welcome on board. Tell everybody who you are and your story, because I heard it's magnificent.
Yeah, there's a story. So our son Quentin Stone Jackson transitioned a little over 16 years ago, and I didn't know anything about anything. So I didn't know what to expect. I was just kind of ripped open. Grief is we all know grief is real, and the way it happened was horrific. And Quentin immediately began to start visiting.
What was your religious orientation
I
before this happened?
didn't. I didn't. I had tried reading the Old Testament twice. Well, got through it once. I didn't go to church. I come to find out I probably was spiritual, in looking back, but I really didn't have religion, and I was a coward when it came to death. So I guess I'll use that word only once because now I look at it as a transition. Whenever anybody was dealing with the transition of a loved one, I wasn't there because I didn't know what to say and I couldn't fix it. So I was a coward. I would just not show up. I was one of those kind of people. I know there's a lot of us out there. So when our son passed away, when he transitioned, I was a blank slate. I mean, I was in survival mode, and he immediately began to visit. 30 hours after he transitioned, I found myself alone in a room, and I realized my hand was being held.
Wow,
And
you feel it.
I could actually feel it. So here I am, alone in a room. I'm at that point, I'm very introspective. I'm very aware. I'm very alert because my whole life's been turned upside down. And I'm right there in the middle of being ripped apart. And I was very conscious to my left hand being held. And I thought to myself, wow, that must be the manifestation of all the prayers. But the prayers were just beginning. It took me some weeks to realize it was Quentin. And the obvious question is, well, really, how do you know? Well, Quentin would always hold our hands. I mean, we would walk hand in hand. He would walk hand in hand with Christine, my wife. He would walk hand in hand with our daughter, Cheyenne. He is that kind of young man. So Quentin knew eventually I'd figure it out.
Was there a significance to it being the left hand as well?
I haven't thought about that. I mean, maybe, but I haven't. I do remember specifically it was my left hand. So maybe I need to cogitate on.
Because the left is associated with the divine feminine, isn't it? Not in terms of the brain, but in terms of the body, because of the difference in the meridians. So I just wonder if it was actually the connection with the feminine side of nature, the fact that it was the left hand.
Maybe. So, I mean, I can tell you about Quentin.
Yeah, sure.
Quentin's an old soul. He was a gift to us. We didn't think we'd be having any more children. Christine wasn't feeling good. When was it, like October, honey, of 98 or so? And went into the doctor, and the doctor said, "Did you want to be pregnant?" And we had just moved back to Colorado. Quentin was a divine gift. I had uprooted Christine from her family in Phoenix because I got an opportunity in Denver, and up there in the Front Range of Colorado is my spiritual home. So we moved, and Christine, being the rock star she is, she's like, all right, let's go. And Quentin's birth was, I mean, a godsend for both of us, but just a blessing. Old soul, loving, kind, caring, the kind of young man that would check on me and say, Dad, are you okay? The kind of young man that greeted Christine first when she got home, when she was working, always helping, always gentle. If somebody was rude to him, he'd come to me and I'd be like, well, just knock him down. He didn't like that answer. And he'd go to Christine and
I could hear him saying, don't forget that I'm generous. I'm generous.
Yeah, he just wanted to know why people were cruel on the school bus. Come to find out afterwards, he was a protector. If somebody was feeling picked on or if somebody was feeling isolated, he would be there on the school bus and at school. We heard a story afterwards of the next school year. So I don't know if that was his fourth grade year or his third grade year, but he went to his former teacher from the prior year, and walked up to her and gave her a hug. And she was so taken by that because students didn't do that. So, but that's Quentin. When we would play catch, whether it be throwing the ball or the football or throwing the baseball, it took me a second, but I got the sense that he was doing it for me because I needed that because I'm a former athlete. So that's a flavor of who Quentin is. So we had some, I mean, we've jumped down the rabbit hole. Quentin began to visit and I realized it was him and I leapt down the rabbit hole and literally walked up to strangers and told them how Quentin was visiting and I was reading everything I could find. And it was all kind of new age, new thought. Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, Messages from the Masters.
That's my favourite book. One of my favourite books. I went to India. I'd actually studied clinical hypnotherapy and I didn't know Dr. Brian Wise, if anybody listening doesn't know, is a clinical hypnotherapist from Miami. He was actually a doctor, a psychiatrist, but he used hypnosis as an experiment and suddenly found out that the lady in question regressed beyond this lifetime and went against the grain in terms of the medical world who didn't really believe him. But if you haven't read the book, go read it because I don't want to spoil it for you, but it is one of my favourite books. And I was in India and somebody just gave me a copy of it and said, read this. And I was like, it was so random. I was like, why are you giving me this book? Why are you giving me this book? Now I look at it and I think, that's one of my signs. That was one of my signs because then I started to look at it in a different way. So,
Yeah.
no coincidence that you're mentioning it, Ernie. Sorry, I interrupted you. Carry on.
No. I mean, this. Let's keep it going. I like the dialogue. Yeah, it was given to me as well, and I don't want to spoil it, but the book isn't necessarily about grief, and for me, it just really drove home the fact that Quentin was alive and well outside of his flesh. When we talk about the subject matter of reincarnation, it's like, well, what's that got to do with grief? But for me, it began my course, if you will, toward understanding that we're immortal and we exist beyond the flesh. And I've read, numerous books, like Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls by Dr. Newton, James Van Praagh, on and on and on. But I was talking to everybody. People began to share with me how their loved ones visited with them. Because Kat, when you show up and you have that energy, the energy, and it's this loving, this awe, this gratitude, this appreciation of, look what I just learned. I learned that my son's alive and well on the other side, and I share like that, and I want to tell everybody, and I'm fearless. So I create a bubble with that energy, and for those who've had those experiences, they felt safe to share with me.
Yeah, I think they're more common than we. Well, I'm finding out from the podcast they're really common. I mean, like so far, we've had about 45, 50 people explaining that they've had the same experiences as me and you. So it's really common, and it's not something in society that we talk about a lot. But when you do have one of these amazing experiences, you have a loved one that transitions and you have these inspired connections, as I call them, you are just in awe and wonder. You do get excited. I get excited like you. I still get excited because I'm like, like we just had
Thank
one.
you.
We just had one for the retreat because the lady that's doing a retreat with me in Canada, she, the retreat that I'm doing is called the Amazing Grace Retreat because it's in Harbour Grace in Newfoundland, Canada. And she ordered a painting. She had no idea that written in the grass of the painting, it says in large letters, Amazing Grace. And I was just like, oh, wow. You see, and there's a personal connection in there for me because I have a baby in spirit and I called her Grace. So there's just this really little moment of like, so we get these little nuggets that just drop in and you're just like, oh, it's so beautiful, isn't it? It's so beautiful.
It is.
Yeah, so it's like, I know what you mean because I still get excited. Everybody that I meet that has these experiences get excited and it becomes quite contagious. And I think the more you're excited, the more your frequency increases, the more signs and synchronicities you seem to have. Some people say to me, why do some people get loads of signs and some people don't get any? And I was like, I think the difference is once you believe, you open up your heart center and you get excited. And when you get excited, you
And your
seem to,
vibration
yeah,
raises.
you attract a different frequency, I think. And like
100%.
attracts like, so you pull that energy towards yourself. So how beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, you and I speak the same language, so I love this. I leaned in on the signs. I mean, I'll share with you some of Quentin's signs, but one of my favorite things is to sit down with an individual, over a cup of tea and help them recognize the signs they're getting. I just start sharing my signs and change the vibe, change the vibration around us. And invariably, at one point, they'll say, there was once something strange happened to me. I'm like, tell me more. Because, for some people who don't believe, that's the way it pierces their consciousness. They say, well, it was strange. It was unusual. Or to get them talking about that incredibly vivid dream, like it was lifelike. Oh, tell me more. And I help them understand that that was actually a sign.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. So Quentin holding my hand, that was a biggie.
How did you know it was him, Ernie?
It took me weeks. It took me maybe a month.
Was it your intuition said there can be no other explanation?
Yeah, I mean, because if you're sitting from that place of complete ignorance, I thought it must have been the manifestation of all the prayers. So I still went to the metaphysical, but I didn't know it was possible. And over those weeks, I realized like the prayers were just getting started. It had only been 30 hours. Not many people knew. And then it just kind of came to me. My son, soft hands, always holds our hands. It was Quentin.
It's beautiful.
So 5 days after the accident, it pierced my consciousness. So it was before I recognized the importance of him holding my hand, even knowing it was him holding my hand. It was 5 days after the accident. Christine had gotten out of ICU because Christine's injuries were horrific. She was driven over the top of, tire marks across her waist, broken ribs, a fractured fibula, a brain injury caused by the undercarriage of the car hitting her in the head, blood in her eyes. So it's a mirror. I mean, Christine died in the accident scene and came back, and she'll tell you that she thinks Quentin brought her back on his way, on his way home. No. She recalled the car coming. We were off the road. The car coming. She recalled screaming, and then next thing she knew, she woke up in the hospital.
Oh, really? That's so frightening.
Yeah. So 5 days after, Christina gotten out of ICU, and I was staying, and where everybody's taking shifts to spend time with Christine. I spent the night at the Marriott Courtyard, and a group of us were going back to the hospital to be with Christine. And after I stepped out of the lobby of the Marriott Courtyard, a medicine man walked up to one of our closest friends, Chris Voldrich, and grabbed her by her hands and said, "I've just finished performing a ceremony. A little boy wanted me to find you and let you know that he's fine." And he went on to say, somebody named Tom is helping him on his journey, transition back, and everything's going to be all right. The lawsuit or the insurance or whatever's coming down the pike, it's going to take longer than expected, but everything's going to be all right. And then he released her hands and walked away.
Wow.
So our friend hightails it to the hospital room. And at that, I mean, when you've undergone something horrific like this, we all we assume our roles. I mean, I wish I could, us fellas, we try to protect, we try to fix. Generally speaking, women do too, but I was trying to protect and manage other people's emotions, and I wasn't focused on myself. But in that moment, I was low. I was literally curled up in a corner, imagining Quentin alone in the darkness. So I'm peering into the abyss, and we all know how that can go. When Chris Voldrich blows into the room and says, "Get everybody together. I can only tell this once." And I thought, oh, dear Lord, what now? How are my nephews? What's going on? And she told that story, and it pierced my consciousness. It took my breath away. Quentin's alive. It was a most magical moment. And my next thought was, why didn't I know? Why didn't I know this worked this way? How did I?
That's such a common thing, though, Ernie. That is such a common thing.
How did I not know? So, I mean, I made the commitment right there to find out. In our second book, you go to the back of the second book, I've got a list of all the books I read.
But there's a lot.
And I have my favorites and the ones most impactful. I read things that were off the beaten path. I read a lot about the culture of the indigenous, the Indians in the Four Corners area where Quentin transitioned, because the happenstance of the way the accident happened was so unusual. When people heard about it, one in particular in Seattle happened to say, "Did that happen in Four Corners?" She just knew from how unusual the accident was. She just, in her mind, thought maybe that was the Four Corners, because it's a sacred ground. It's a lot of living's gone over there in the past 12, 15,000 years.
When you did the research on that area, what did you find?
Well, they talk about the Anasazi, which, isn't necessarily their name, but they talk about how they vanished. Some people think they just died off or walked through a portal. And what I read is that area in the southwest here where we're at right now has been dealing with great droughts since the beginning of time. And there was a very, very severe drought from 1276 to 1306. And the book I happen to have read, I think, is House of Rain. The author postulates that those people, the Anasazi and the tribes that were there, just turned around and went back from where they came from thousands of years ago, 4,000 or 5,000 years prior. They just went back south. They came back down through Maricopa County. Some kept going into Old Mexico. Nobody died or vanished. They just turned around and walked back the way they came, because they had walked up there to begin with. And he went so far as to prove that it was very easy to walk the distance between Flagstaff and Cortez, Colorado.
Wow. The
Yeah.
same places that you have been.
Yeah, we traveled through. We were traveling through we were traveling past the accident site dozens of times before the accident happened over the course of our entire marriage. And I'd started making that drive before Christine and I got married. So we've been driving past that site, and I'll jump ahead, but we're having a conversation.
I'm thinking, my head's going,
all right, you're going to get a kick out of this.
So my head's thinking, are you retracing your energetic steps from a previous life?
I think I was the historian in a tribe, and we tell history through stories. I drive Christine and so many people crazy. They ask me for an answer, and I give them a story. Like I'm telling you now. It's like, I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm going to give you the backstory. I think I was a historian, maybe for one of those tribes in the area.
Wow, that's amazing. The reason that I'm asking, and I was actually talking about this in another podcast with a friend of mine called Jill. My friend and I, Preno, have travelled extensively around the world together in terms of work and pleasure. And we've gone to different places on our own as well, but we were directed by Spirit to go see a soul reader. And if anyone doesn't know what a soul reader is, if you can't be regressed, you can have a soul reading in order to find out some of your past incarnations or a little bit more about your soul and your soul purpose and what's going on in your life, to help with direction. An amazing synchronicity took us to this lady, and this lady had an incredible story herself, Ernie. She had literally been told by Spirit to sell or mortgage her house to go to the other side of the world, and that somebody would meet her on a beach and teach her how to do soul reading. This lady was widowed, and she took the leap and went all the way. Her daughter, apparently, her family were going crazy, thinking she'd lost the plot. But here she does it, and this guy meets her on the beach, and he teaches her how to do soul reading. So she comes back and she makes back the money that she had spent through doing the reading. And so we're fortunate to meet this woman, not really understanding her full story or why we're there. We don't know why we're there. We're just being told to go there in the most amazing way. So the two of us were like, ooh, let's
Wow.
go. Got really excited. And what was really fascinating, because we didn't tell her anything, Ernie, we just sat down. We were very open, and when she went into trance and she started to read for us, being a sort of light to mid-state trance, which isn't normally the normal way people will do a one-to-one reading, but this lady, that's what she'd learned. And she literally went through all the places that we'd been travelling in this lifetime, identified when we'd been there together and when we'd been there separately, and then told the past life story connected to why we'd gone there together. And we had goosebumps because we thought, well, evidentially, although she doesn't say, she did tell us certain bits that she couldn't have known, but It was really the fact that, unbeknown to her, she was pointing out all the places in this lifetime we had revisited together. And that's what gave us goosebumps. We were like, don't you think that's weird? And I think that's even more magical how subtle spirit can be, because we were just like, we went away with that aura of like, that woman doesn't have a clue. But we do. We understand the significance of what she was saying. And isn't that interesting?
It's fascinating. I mean, because I've been on this crazy journey of trying to tell everybody and save the world. I want everybody to know. But I'm not pompous. I'm not an expert. So I've got a window into it. So I signed the book, No, There Is More. And go do your own research and figure out what that means for you. Yeah. But there's more. And there's so many layers. How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? How many layers of the onion do you want to peel back? Yes. There is more.
Take us all the way, Ernie.
It is so much. It is so much. So more, I mean, let me give you some more signs from Quentin. So I told you about the medicine man, and to go jump around a little bit more, the lady who caused the accident.
Do you know what tribe the medicine man was from, by the way?
Yeah, I do. He was Navajo. And I know that because Christine and I got to know the lady who caused the accident very, very, very well, because I forgave her at the accident without knowing that word. I hadn't read the New Testament. I hadn't found Christ, but I looked in her eyes at the accident and I saw her pain and I saw her horror. And I thought to myself, give me that, because she was living from a certain perspective, my nightmare. I've had an interesting childhood. There was fear in the house. There was violence in the house. And I escaped when I got my driver's license by driving with a suicidal bent. And basically every morning I would say, it's today my day, and please don't let me take anybody with me. I didn't want to be the cause of the passing of another. And when I looked in her eyes, I saw that pain. And I said, give me that.
Like a mirror, almost like a mirror of your soul's experiences.
I looked in her eyes and I felt her soul, and I felt her pain, and I felt her horror. I felt her shock. And I'm like, I didn't want her to feel that. But this is while I'm holding my son taking his last breaths. It's almost unbelievable. It's like, really? Am I crazy? But no, this is exactly what happened. So we worked for 1 year and 51 weeks to eliminate all charges, and did everything in our power so she wouldn't have to serve jail time. Met her in the courtroom, embraced her after the trial, if you will, gave her a hug, told her in her ear, we've been worried about you. She had to serve 10 days, and the judge spent 15 minutes explaining why. He wanted her to know that she had paid her debt. We did our victim's advocacy statement in advance, saying we don't want her to serve any jail time. That's listed in the second book, Quentin's Legacy. She had suffered for 1 year and 51 weeks. She had put weight on. Her skin went bad acne, and she had the most horrible case of bronchitis when she walked into the courthouse. We had breakfast with her 2 months later at her house with her grandmother, and proceeded to go further into the reservation and participate in a ceremony. But my point here is, actually there is a point, being in the car with this young lady, we drove past the accident site. Now at this time, she was about 21 and a half, 22 years old. We drove past the accident site, and she said, I remember when I was 6 years old being driven past here and thinking to myself, what an awful place to have an accident. It's like her soul knew. Her soul knew.
I've got goosebumps again.
Yeah. So we can come back to that if you want, because there's more. But for the signs, more of the signs on Quentin, the hummingbirds were.
How does that girl feel about it now? And she knows how spiritual your journey is. And she looks, and she makes that, so maybe what is a bit of a flippant comment to her. She doesn't really understand at the time the significance of what she's saying. She just does the recall. What does she think herself when she looks back at that comment?
Well, I got up and I addressed the court, and we explained she suffered enough. Serving time isn't going to help her. It's going to hurt her. She got up and addressed the court and basically said that she had a takeaway. She had an epiphany. She was not living her life the way she should. Now, she was a student at college. She fell asleep. No drugs, no alcohol. She was trying to get home. But her epiphany was she wasn't being a good mom. She wasn't focused on her 6-month-old child. Now, her child wasn't in the car with her at the time, but that was her epiphany. That was her takeaway. Because we shared our takeaway, and she shared hers. So Christine's still connected with her on Facebook.
The judge must have been just totally amazed by this, Ernie. The fact that you're there as parents who've experienced this awful trauma, lost your son. I mean, did you have a conversation with the judge?
Well, I mean, it's funny, Kat. It's funny because I've written 2 books, and you'll probably appreciate this. The first book was published in 2011. The second book was published in 2015. A lot goes into writing a book. You write it. The first one was a download. The second one was a little more challenging to write. Editing is not fun, and then you start talking about the book, but you lose sight of what's in the books. So I recently reread Quentin's messages, which brings it all back, and I'm rereading Quentin's legacy, which is like it helps us remember. It helps us remember. So I just reread the court scene, and I wrote that we felt like the red carpet was being rolled out before us. They had all read our victims' advocacy statement. They all knew we were there to forgive. Amanda and her family knew we were there to forgive. They had read the statement before, too. So as this scene's unfolding, this incredible, unusual scene in this courtroom, I remember looking around and feeling their awe, their amazement of what they were witness to. It was an incredible scene.
That is amazing, Ernie.
It's,
It is amazing. It's
and
amazing.
it's not a box check. It's not a box check. I mean, and I, get me going. Here we go. I talk all the time, and a box check is a box check. It's you're doing something because somebody told you you're supposed to do it. When it happens, just because it happens, just because your soul feels it, that's magical. I mean, I forgave without reading about forgiveness. I was not a forgiving person. I forgave for something totally, soul to soul, caring for another person, because nobody among us is perfect. We all have things we're trying to learn and grow about, and any of us can have an oopsie. And it could be like you go and you change the station on the radio and you look back up and it's like, it could happen that fast. So being judgmental just doesn't fit. And of course, you forgive.
I've had scenarios where spirit have walked me through things. I can't really talk too much about them publicly, but they've shown me that quite often when mistakes are made, it's the intention behind it that's important. Because some people don't even realise they've made a mistake. Some people, their intention was actually the opposite of what the impact was. And if you don't make presumptions and you go in open-minded the way that you did, the reveal and what it gives on a soul level is so immensely different. I mean, you could have gone in bitter, angry, furious, throwing the kitchen sink at her, and you would have had a very different emotional journey and experience. You would have probably taken a lot longer to heal. And
If I healed.
yeah, if you healed at all, absolutely. And it would have had even more consequences. You may have had, your health may have been impacted because your emotional health affects your physical health and all these things that we know that there's a connection to. So I find it really incredible that your soul, even though it didn't have a religious background, knew that it had to navigate the higher ground. And it did so potentially because of the nature of your son and his personality.
Yeah,
So
it all goes.
he had been a teacher to you in life, not with words, with his presence, which showed that he was a highly evolved spirit.
You nailed it. You nailed it. You are so in touch. I had been told that Quentin and I had run through this scenario in another lifetime, but I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I didn't grow. I didn't evolve. So we chose to do it again. And I can tell you, most emphatically, we're not going to do it a third time.
All the way through, I always get goosebumps in readings when something's really resonates and literally the hairs keep lifting and I get this like tingling going down my arms and the back of my spine. I think it's incredible. I think the message that you're sending out there in terms of loving and forgiving and analysing something from what I'd say is like you're standing back a little bit, aren't you? You're observing a bit more. You're not rushing into judgment. You're just observing and seeing you're feeling your way. What is the potential if I handle this differently? And you gave yourself that opportunity. And I'd sort of say to any of the listeners, if you're going through something similar or a really big challenge, perhaps don't react straight away. Remove yourself and step backwards and give yourself time to think about what the potential scenarios are if you go in on a different vibration. I think you navigated to go in on a higher vibration and therefore you've got a higher vibration result because you attracted that towards yourself, which is kind of cool.
It's very cool. And it's, I mean, I talk a lot. I mean, not as much as I did in the past because I was literally on fire. But I talk a lot, and yeah, I tell people, don't try to do it alone. Reach out. We're not made to go through the grief journey alone. Ask for help.
Did you find that you had the right people around you? Because you said at the beginning, you made that comment where you said, you were one of those people who didn't know how to handle grief. So you might not have turned up for somebody else because you found it so difficult. When you were in that scenario, were the right people around you?
Funny story. We've got people like Christine and I. We are known as good people. I mean, Christine's better than me, but we're both known as good people. So people came to our aid. And I joke about us boys because sometimes we're not connected with our emotions. I know because I'm a boy. And some of the fellas had the courage that I lacked, and they showed up in my presence just to be there. And I filled the silence. I was already beginning to realize something magical was going on. As I was realizing it, I was speaking it. And I filled the silence with what I was learning, what I was realizing. And
how did people react to that, Ernie? Did it divide the room, or were people right behind you?
It was incredible. And it still is. People, I've yet to find somebody tell me I'm crazy. There's maybe a part of me looking for that silly person. But they were just in.
I have a saying with one of my loved ones in spirit. When I first realised that he had transitioned and that was in spirit, one of my friends from school, he came and he said, just remember how crazy I was. And just remember that a little bit of crazy is a really good thing. And I was like, you're on. He always had a good time. He always found a party wherever he was. Didn't matter whether it rained, shone, indifferent. He always had a smile on his face. And so I think a little bit of crazy is good.
Yeah. Well, I shared stories from others in both my books. And the first one specifically because everything was so new to me, I was concerned readers might think, oh, this dude's insane. And I needed to know for my own edification that other people got similar signs, had similar experiences. But I created my own group because wherever I walked, I carried that love, and I was on fire. I was large and in charge. No fear. I carried this and I talked to everybody and I created my own grief group and people loved us and they came to hear us. And after a short period of time, somebody said, Ernie, you should write a book. And I'm like, no. But the first book wrote itself. So we did try a different grief group. Now, granted, this is before HPH. I was in Denver. HPH was born in Phoenix. So there was no HPH in our circle. We did try a different grief group. And I think it was 2 or 3 months after the accident. And we walked in there and we sat there and we endured it. And Christine and I looked at each other and we're like, nope, because they were stuck. For some of them, they were 10 years and they were stuck. They were still in heavy grief. They went around the room for people to share their heavy grief and they came around to us and I wasn't going to bust their grief bubble. Now, since then, I've been back to this group and years had passed and I don't mind busting their grief bubble. But yeah, I was on fire. I attracted people that fed my fire, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because in the talking, you're changing the energies. So the story and the catharticness of that and the energy of, I find that happens to me as well, when the energy of spirit or something amazes me, you just want to share it. You want to get it out. You want to understand it. And the easiest way to understand it is to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I annoyed a lot of people because I talked a lot. I shared a lot. I was happy. Some people knew on their grief journey. Like when I became part of Helping Parents Heal, I spoke numerous times here in Phoenix, and there'd be somebody in the audience that was 2 or 3 months into their grief journey. And they're very honest. They're like, Ernie, we thought you were crazy and we didn't like you very much. But they say months later, yeah, we get it now. Thank you. Thank you for opening our eyes to what was possible. But yeah, some people don't know how to take me. I was on a podcast recently, the Lost Child podcast. And Christine was too. And I had a very specific goal. I'm going to share Quentin, but this couple that I honor and I love them, they're still new on their grief journey. They're 2 years in, and I was their 35th episode. So they're all in, learning and growing and from other people's journeys. Part of me wanted to make them smile. So I was a little over the top, but I made them smile.
That's really cool. It's true, isn't it? Different people read it different ways, and people don't always understand the journey in those early stages of grief, because they need their own time to process it, don't they? And that's okay. But I love that they came back to you later and they explained that actually it had made a difference, because it's all these little waves of information that then help get you on the bigger wave of change and transformation, if that is destined for you, because some people
If
choose
exactly
otherwise. And I think
right.
what's really lovely about everybody that I've met in all the groups that I've been working with and had the privilege to meet is that nobody from this spiritual sort of movement ever forces another person to accept the journey that they've been on themselves. They just suggest and are very open about it's an
Right.
incredible journey. And if you want
Right.
to have this ticket, come buy this ticket from me. but
Yeah.
but equally, if it's not your ticket, you can get on a different bus. It's whatever, or plane, or flight, or you know.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that people realise that it's you elect and choose to make the choice of having that. What I'd say is it's very hard to say the word better, isn't it? Because everybody's experience is so powerful. But to have the higher level experience and to be able to transmute grief quicker, and to be able to perhaps even neutralise it and realise that you're not giving up on love by letting go of grief. In fact, if anything, you're loving even harder.
Yeah.
So the love becomes more
Yeah.
intense. And that's what I'm getting from your story, is that you're clearly happier now in some ways. I don't want to say happier than when Quentin was here, but your learning and your development excites you.
I
And there has been some collateral beauty in your experience. Would that be fair to say?
Well, yeah, you said it all. I mean, I've grown in ways that I never would have grown. Of course, I wish Quentin were here. I mean, so many of us, we say that. We just throw it. It's like, yeah, I'm happy. I've learned, I've grown, but don't think I don't miss my child. But it's a nuanced conversation. Every grief journey is different. It's not a race. I when
Do you see Quentin in the people that get sent to you, Ernie? Do you see that he sends you people?
Yeah, we've had that experience. I mean, it's pretty cool. We had an experience recently where we were in a store in a supermarket, and there was a young man and had a name tag, and his name tag was Quentin, with the way we spell Quentin. But we've been in restaurants before, and the server comes, and it'd be a young man, 21 years old or whatever. And Christine and I would look at each other at the same time, say, Quentin's in there. He reminds us of Quentin, like Quentin piggybacked in. It's just, it's just so much more. All of it's possible. All of it's real. But it's an incredibly nuanced conversation because everybody's on an individual journey. HPH likes it when I talk about forgiveness. And can you imagine? And you know what I'm going to say. So I've got an audience of, 50 or 60 parents who are not forgiving because of how their child transitioned. And you got this guy up there talking about forgiveness. And when I give that talk, I talk for half my allotted time, and then I make space for people to unload and unpack. And that is magical. I've had people raise their voice at me and say, "Are you telling me I'm supposed to forgive?" And I say, "No, I'm not." Because sometimes you need the rage and the anger just to function for a little while, just to get out of bed. But I am telling you, when you're ready, it'll help your journey.
That's really powerful, Ernie.
So it's crazy. And this is my sweet spot. So thank you, Kat. I love being on your show.
What's the most amazing story? Because you met loads of people. What's the most amazing healing story that you've been part of?
Oh, dear Lord. Well, one comes to mind right away, but there have been numerous, but there's one in particular. It was early on. I went back to a building that I used to manage, and I had been telling a story. I had done videos. I don't think the first book was out yet. Maybe it was, but I went to an office manager and I was talking to her, and she started crying and she said, "Thank you." I'm like, what do you mean? She said, "Ernie, when I was 12, my mom passed away. And I was in my room and I felt her holding my hands. And I went and told my dad. And my dad said, "Stop that. Stop that. Don't tell anybody that. They'll think you're crazy." And she said, "Ernie, in hearing your story of how Quentin was holding your hand, I now know it really happened. Thank you." And
Really beautiful. I have
that's,
a lovely story, actually, connected slightly. Bob Jacobs, he lost his wife and his son. And when I was working with a young lady who'd lost her son, something happened, and basically this medium completely out of the blue, I mean, not connected in any way to me whatsoever, Ernie, reached out through somebody and gave me a message about this young man in spirit, thanking me for the work that I'd done with his mum and explaining what the experience was like for him in the spirit world. And I had goosebumps because the thing that really resonates with me is when what I realized is it's a bit like what you're saying about prayer is like when somebody answers your prayer and is a conduit for spirit, there's an exchange that can happen if you allow it. And so in thanks for him giving me that message, which really brought me to tears to think, I think I'm working for the living sometimes, and you're not, you're working for spirit, and so you're very easy to accept the gratitude or the love of the people in front of you, but you forget that actually maybe the people in spirit are as moved by what is happening as you are. He as a thanks to him, I turned around and I said, I'm going to read for you. I believe that you've got a son in spirit. Is that correct? And he said yes. And I said, all I can tell you is your son's reaching out his hand and he's saying, hold my hand, Dad. And he has a plaster cast of his hand and he holds it every day. So holding hands is an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing, but it's personal to some individuals. So yeah, you've opened up the door for somebody spiritually. It wasn't necessarily about the grief. It was the acceptance that their experience was normal.
Right. And people typically don't talk about it. And I want them. I'm doing a presentation August 20th to a trade association that I've been a part of for the better part of 30 years here in Phoenix. I was a member in Denver. Now I'm a member in Phoenix, and I'm going to be talking about the value of the trade association. But they love my vibe. They like that I'm positive, and they want to know about me. I'm going to talk about Quentin. And I'm going to talk about the signs. And then I'm going to finish up and say, well, there's a reason we're here. I mean, it's been shown to me that we're immortal, that we exist beyond the flesh. The next question is why am I here? I understand mine, and I invite you to think about your life in the same way. There is a rhyme and a reason to what you're experiencing, and we run through the pain. I'm so sorry. I hate saying that, but we don't learn when it's easy because we're humans. We're not the sharpest tech
available to us, but we just don't take that ticket.
No, it's gotta hurt.
It definitely accelerates something, doesn't it? But but that kind of brings us full circle to the fact that you're here because of a sign and synchronicity that happened to me. And I love the fact that I thought I knew everybody in the organisation HPH, especially at the board level. I thought I had met everybody. I hadn't met you, I hadn't met Christy. The kids in the spirit world, they didn't want you left out. They knew you had this amazing story. They wanted to gift it to the podcast. I love the fact that they sorted it out, Ernie, and that you're here under their spirit and their wing, which is exactly what an inspired connection is about.
It's all in divine timing. This is perfect timing. What time wasn't right before.
Yeah, that's what I think. I just think that's really amazing. It's really, truly, well, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you, and I've loved hearing your story. And I know that Andy's going to be absolutely gutted that he's not here. So I'm sure at some point we'll have to have you back because you'll have to meet him.
We can do it again. We can do it again.
Maybe we'll get Christine on, and then you can.
And in all seriousness, yeah, I'm a little over the top. People really connect with Christine. She's got a very powerful voice. She is so empathetic and so loving. And she comes at it from a little bit of a different direction, but people connect more with her than they do with me. So I hope you do have her on.
From her injuries, Ernie, because I know the viewers will be interested, has she fully recovered from all the injuries from 16 years ago from the crash?
Christine's still in pain. She doesn't let on. She doesn't advertise it. She doesn't take pain pills. She deals with it. She works so hard to keep her mental acuity. She's exercising. She's getting chiropractic treatment because her body's constantly in pain. And you'd never know. But she doesn't want sympathy. She doesn't talk about it. And she talks to so many people and helps them and makes their lives better. So we're both here to serve and help others. But I got mad respect for my wife. She lives in pain all the time, so I can't complain about my little pain.
Did she experience post-traumatic stress disorder as well?
What's that, post-traumatic stress
Yeah,
disorder?
did she have any mental trauma from the crash as well as physical?
Yeah, no, she does. I mean, have her on, she can go into detail. Yeah, she had an interesting journey because her body was racked in pain. So she was on pain meds for the better part of 2 years. Our people grieve differently, and husbands and wives need to understand that. I didn't want to be let alone. I didn't want to be left alone because I didn't know what would happen. I knew I was scared of being left alone. And Christine just wanted to be alone. We had a little bit of a misunderstanding and a little come to Jesus, but it took some time. But she realized my why. But it took her getting off the pain meds for Quentin to make contact with her. I mean, and she said like he was playing hide and seek while she was on the pain meds. But once she got off the pain meds, Quentin let her know that he's there. He made his presence known.
That's really beautiful. Ernie, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been wonderful, a gift to be on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat. You're wonderful. I'm so happy to be on.
Oh, thank you.